Welcome back to our network partner webinar series. We're excited today to be talking about making a plan and working the plan and how strategic plans for community engagement can pay off for everyone involved. I'm Kathleen Murphy, and I'm with Best Friends Animal Society as a legislative policy analyst. And so I'm excited to be moderating this today with our colleagues. And Caitlin, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? And then we'll have you do the same, Eric.
Thanks, Kathleen. So I'm Caitlin Simmons. I am our Senior Manager of Grassroots Advocacy. So I work with our advocates all day long, every day.
Great. Eric?
Hi, I'm Eric Swafford. I'm the Senior Manager of Campaign Strategy here at Best Friends, and I work all things legislative, all things advocacy, and absolutely thrilled to be here today.
Great. Well, thank y'all so much. Let's just jump right in to what's the difference between grassroots and grass tops. I mean, we hear a lot of these phrases. They sound so similar. You would think they could be interchangeable, but there's a big difference. Caitlin, what's the difference between the two?
Well, I'll start with the grassroots because I think that is a little bit more understood, and people tend to pair grassroots with community, which is not wrong. That is correct. So grassroots advocacy is basically that process of just communicating with your general public and asking the general public to contact their representatives, their local elected officials, about any particular issue. So it's really having general community understand what you're talking about and having them be their voice for their own community and their own issues at home. Eric, do you want to build out grass tops?
Yeah.
Grass tops. Grass tops is actually, it's very different. Grass tops advocacy, that's where we utilize influential members of a community in order to influence elected officials, legislators, that sort of thing. When we think of grass tops, we think of, who knows council member X, or who knows Representative Y, and who may have influence on them. And when we talk about grass tops, we're not talking necessarily about, politicos or donors or things like that. Oftentimes, when we talk about grass tops, we're talking about somebody that maybe they go to church with, their kids are on the same soccer team, they're in the same Rotary Club, that sort of thing. But it's targeting or identifying key individuals or key folks in a community that we know have a sphere of influence.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's a great point to start us off on, because I want to ask next, why grass tops? Why? I mean, you explained what it is, but why go there?
Well, I'll go first since I kicked off grass tops. We think about it. Who has the most influence on us? Our friends, our family members, our neighbors, people that we run into all the time, people that we see. I think back to the time when I was in elected office back many, many years ago. And, if I got several calls or several emails about an issue from my community, obviously that weighed in on things. But let somebody that I went to high school with, that maybe lived down the street from me, or our kids play on the same ball team, that I know I'm going to see over and over, that I come in contact with, true people that I know very well, that I know would always have my best interest at the top of their mind, and the best interest of their city or their community or our legislative district, whatever the case may be, at the top of their mind. Those folks, you're going to tend to listen to them. You're going to tend to make sure you take just an extra little bit of time to take that phone call or to answer that email, to have that conversation. And so, when we think about advocacy and grassroots and grass tops, ideally we want both. Ideally, we want the grass tops pushing down and the grassroots coming up, and we want to sandwich our legislator or our policymaker in between the two and convince them that we're on the right side of the issue.
Well, let's just hope they don't get they aren't allergic to grass and have hay fever, right? I mean, so that's the only, I'm sorry, that's the only thing I could that was popping in my head right then with this seasonal allergies too. So sorry about that. Caitlin, tell us how to cultivate and what and where to get those grass top relationships moving. What should we do there? Why is it important? Is it
Yeah.
something that we just pop up and do when we have an issue, or is it something we need to spend more time on?
There's so much there. And I think it goes to Eric's point of grass tops and grassroots and needing both. Because at the end of the day, and we'll dig into this a little bit more later, I would be very impressed if anybody on this call was able to get 100% of their community on board with their issue, right? Like, we all know that there's probably going to be one person at least who disagrees with our stance. They just disagree for whatever reason it is. Maybe it's personal, maybe it's truly the issue. And so you do need both. You need your people who have influence, you need your people who have connections, and you need the community at large, so that you're hearing it from both sides. You're hearing it from your general community that most of them support you, right? There is support within the general community. There is a voice and belief in that issue. Elected officials always want that because they do get elected, not based on their best friend, but based on their community, right?
That's right.
However, your grass tops is so important because when you're making a decision, if you know the community at large wants it, and your best friend wants it, or your major donor wants it, or your wife wants it, you feel even more solid, right? You're like, okay, my community wants this, and the people that I know and trust also are telling me this is important. So if you hear from a few people who disagree, you're going to feel confident that you're still making the right decision for your community and the people that you know. And the other piece of this is, so often we may not know who those connections are, right? Like, I live in Atlanta. You probably could find some people that are key to me in my life. You're probably not going to find all of them. I may have connections here that, Kathleen, you don't know about, and you don't know that they're going to sway my opinion that I have a great amount of respect for. So when you get your grassroots, so often you will find people within that advocate base that have the connections, that know people, and they may not even tell you. They just might go to Kathleen and say, like, hey, Kathleen, I'm hearing about this in my community, and this is really important, and I think you need to, dig into this and support this issue. So it's really getting that, both of those, and finding your grass tops oftentimes through your grassroots supporters and building those relational connections.
That's a great way to put it. But do those relationships stay evergreen, or do they go stale? To me, it sounds like could one be more high maintenance than the other? What do we do to kind of keep that relationship going?
I'll start with grassroots maybe, and then I'll tap Eric in for the other piece. One thing I see a lot is we're all so busy that we want to tap people in, we want to tap the community in when we need a thing, when we have an ask. And we say, like, hey, community, I need your support today, right now. And then we're successful, right? We win and whew, thank goodness. And we forget to revisit it with our community. So we've just asked, say, 100 of our supporters to take action, to call their elected, to support us. And then we have a victory, and maybe we post about it on social media. Maybe that's it. Or maybe it doesn't. We don't have a victory and we're really bummed out, and we move on with all of the other 100 activities that we need to do because we're running with our hair on fire. What ends up happening is our community gets disengaged because they're only being bought, right? Like they start associating us with, like, okay, well, Best Friends Animal Society is only going to tap me when they need me to do a thing. So if I'm busy or I don't have free time, I'm just, maybe going to disconnect from this issue because I don't know what's going on. People today are very busy and they are taking in information from every single source. We wake up in the morning and our phone bings and we're like, information, hooray. So people want to be engaged with your issue, and they want to be engaged with the journey, and they want to be part of that journey. And people are very aware that journeys are rough. They are rocky. They come with wins and they come with losses. And so it's so important, if you want your advocates and you want your grassroots to be there for you long term and to do what you're asking them to do, you have to build that trust in your issue and in yourself. And you do that by just keeping them informed, keeping them in the loop, not when there's always an ask, just to let them know what's going on. And then when you do have an ask, if they're busy, they'll find time to do it because they already know what's going on, and they will make time to support you because they've been part of that journey with you.
That makes sense. Eric, do you have anything you think, did Caitlin cover that?
Make personal connections. Make these issues personal. I say communicate, even when you don't have an ask. When we do that, when we really connect with people and we really let them know what's going on with our issues, we let them know what we're working on. Then when there comes a time when maybe they don't agree with us, that's okay. If we are communicating with elected officials and we do so, and there comes a time when they're just really not with us, but we've built that relationship, then one of two things is going to happen. Either we win that person over, obviously, or we agree to disagree on that particular issue. Here's the absolute truth. None of us are going to agree with each other 100% of the time. The three of us work together day in and day out, and we're not always going to agree. My wife and I have been married almost 24 years, and she does not agree with me all the time. She should, but she doesn't.
Personal issue.
If I want her to know that, I'll tell her. But that's okay because there's a personal connection. We understand that the three of us host this. We understand that at times we're just not going to see eye to eye, and that's okay. We all know where our hearts are. We communicate with each other about issues. We know one another. We know we're all trying to do the best we can for as much as we can and as many as we can. And that's the kind of relationships that real grassroots and real grass tops advocates and advocacy build with elected officials, with boards, with the community, so that when something comes up, and something will always come up, you can say, okay, it's all right, I understand. Or we'll just agree to disagree, and that's okay too.
So it sounds like that engagement kind of year round builds that relationship so it can weather the storm if something you don't see eye to eye, where the relationship doesn't end there. You can continue to be friends.
Right.
So can y'all give us some examples of experiences you've had that have successfully done this by engaging the community, building out your grass tops, building out your grassroots, and how that has helped on an issue?
Well, I'd love to kind of build off of what Eric said a little bit about this also speaks to why we need grassroots, because not everybody's gonna agree with you. So I'll give an example. It was in Georgia, and there was a city commission that was meeting about community cap programming. The shelter was like good with the community cap program. There was a partner who was gonna, push the community cap program forward. Everything seemed like it was gonna be totally fine. Well, one person caught wind of this and they did not agree with community cap programming. So they called their elected official and said, like, I have a problem with this. And then they came to the meeting and they said, I have a problem with this. And the commission was like, okay, well, we're not going to move forward with it because, Joe said he doesn't like it. And we've heard from Joe today. So we need to pause and we need to rethink this, right? And this is not actually uncommon. What ended up happening is there was so much grassroots support for CAP programming, but electeds hadn't heard from them and they hadn't organized. So they just didn't know. They were like, we don't know what our community wants. So we need to think about this because this is not our wheelhouse. And this is not uncommon. This also happens to partners and shelters where they have one person, and I don't like to give this too much airtime, but I do think it's important to talk about it. They have one person who's just being awful, right? Like you have one person who's opposed to you, who's attacking your shelter and your organization. you need that support. You need that backing. You don't need to get in a fight with them. You don't need to get in a fight with your electeds either. You don't need to be the bad guy in all these situations. If you have that grassroots support, if you have that base, they can have your back for you. So they can go to the meeting and say, like, we're sorry Joe does, has a problem with it, but like the vast majority of your community supports it and we want to see it. And we're happy to talk to Joe and address Joe's issues with him. Like, they can go to your advocate who, is your advocate turned bad, right? And is attacking the shelter or is attacking a program. And they can say, like, this shelter is well-intentioned. They're trying to save lives. They're trying to look out for their community and we have your back. So it's really that piece of, you need your supporters and you need to have them engaged, and you can't be afraid of the people who might disagree with you fundamentally or on a certain issue. And you shouldn't be, because you will have that base of support for people who can support your issue and who can take that fight away from you. So you don't always have to do that hard work and that dirty work and feel like you're fighting this fight on your own. You're not. You're fighting it with your people, right? You have a support base with you.
So it sounds like the strength in numbers can almost drown out one loud voice or one negative Nelly per se in that situation, if you've got your community backing. I think that's a great example to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. Eric, tell us about North Carolina. I know you've had some experience there with this.
Absolutely. One particular community's shelters just really struggled over there, and sad situation really is a county that was really experienced some real struggles through COVID and right after COVID. They needed resources. They folks in the shelter were doing the best they could, but they just didn't have a lot of resources, didn't have a lot of community support. They didn't think, and they had a board of health that didn't think the community cared, didn't think anybody cared. And here's what we found out. First of all, kind of what we did. I went to a board of health meeting, just showed up, walked in and knew that there was time for the public to speak at the very beginning and have a few minutes. And I stood up and introduced myself. And the first thing I did is said, I realize that I cannot fathom the responsibility that you all have in trying to navigate your county and this health department and the departments and divisions that are under it through this crisis. I realize that I'm talking to a board of health in the highest concentration of COVID cases in the entire state with very few resources. I get that. There's not a lot that I can do about the major problem that is taking up a whole lot of your plate and a lot of your mind. But there's some good news. I'm here to tell you that there are resources available for your animal shelter. That's one thing that I can do, that Best Friends can do, that will take a little off of your plate, make a little bit more room, and we can offer some help. So we took that kind of top down or grass tops approach talking to them. And then we turned right around, and Caitlin and her team, just to make sure that they understood that the community was with them, went and tabled at an event with little postcards, just asking people, if you love pets, if you love dogs, if you love cats, would you please contact your board of health member and let them know that you would like them to partner with Best Friends and accept some resources and see if we can't start changing things for the better. And, a few hundred postcards later from one small community event, a few hundred postcards later, those conversations started happening, and it was one of those things that we started up here and we started down here, and we worked to kind of meet in the middle. And, the one thing that I will say that was a little bit difficult, and we all have to just accept that, is the one thing we all really want to do is walk in there and say, you people are awful. You're doing a bad job. You don't care about animals. You don't care about your shelter. You don't care about the staff. You don't care about community. You're doing a bad job, and I don't like you. That's what we really want to do. Let's just admit it. We do, because we get angry because these issues are personal and these issues are emotional and these issues are important. What you have to do is say, you know what? Maybe they don't know what's available. Maybe they don't know how important this is to their community. Maybe they don't know that they can do better with just a little bit of help. And maybe they don't know that there is a lot of support and a lot of people behind them to do the right thing on a variety of issues. And caring about one issue does not make you care less about another. We've got more ability to care about more things than we realize. And offer those elected officials, offer them just a little bit of grace, and offer them a little bit of kindness and a little bit of compassion, and try to understand that they do have a full plate, and maybe they don't know that there's a way out there to take a little bit off, make a little bit of room for some other things. And I'll tell you what, it was kind of amazing to watch the room and to watch those conversations and watch those relationships change was pretty amazing, to be honest.
That's one of my favorite things, is to see those relationships blossom. And especially when advocates see, oh, I can make a difference by sending that postcard or calling their elected official, or, kind of maybe stepping outside their comfort box, but seeing that it works. So I think this has been a lot of great information for our partners today. And as we wrap up, is there anything else y'all want to add?
I would have two takeaways, because I'm really not great at following rules. So I'm going to give you two instead of one.
You can give my takeaway.
I would say, don't let your fear control you. Fear of the unknown, fear of something you haven't done before, can be debilitating. And I have done this time and time again in community after community after community. And I promise you that there are people in your community who will support you that you have not met yet. So don't let your fear stop you from doing something new that could really open up some doors for you and could really enhance your work. And then the second piece of that is, don't let bandwidth and your inability to do this at the scale that you want to and do all the things and know how to do everything stop you from starting. Just go ahead and take the step. You'll learn on the way. You will learn with your community. Your community probably doesn't know how to do it either. And so they will come on this journey with you, and you guys will learn together. And even if you can only do it a little bit, it will start to grow past what you can imagine today. So don't be scared of not being perfect. None of us are perfect. We all learn along the way. So I would say those are, two things to take away from today.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you both for being on here. And that concludes this one, and we will see you on our next webinar. Thank you.
Sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.